I'm really happy to be here. I'm one of those people who really believes in technology, that technology can make a big difference in the lives of our students. One of the ways that technology helps is not directly with the student, but with the administrators. Cognos is an example of a program that helps administrators. In particular, right now, data-driven, and I've misspelled it, data-driven decision-making is very important. That instead of making decisions based on gut feelings or on anecdotal information, that principals are encouraged to use real data to drive their decisions. Cognos is an online relational database. Relational means that, let's take this as an example. Each student has a student number. Then you have one table that gives their teacher's name, their grade level, maybe their address. Then there's another table that said a student with this number got this test score on the end of level test for third grade math. And there's another table that says this student has this test score for an advanced placement course. The relational database then can connect all of these. It can connect the teacher with the student they teach or that they taught 2 years ago, and gives you access to all of this information. Cognos provides administrators with the information they need to improve instruction. For example, our district compares the scores that our students receive to the state average, and also to other districts within the state, especially those that are nearby. But that way we can see if Alpine is performing at least the level of an average district in Utah, or at a higher level or a lower level, so that we can compare ourselves. And a needs assessment starts with a gap between the desired function and the actual function, so that this can provide a need that then changes in instruction can help to cure. In addition, every single school can compare itself to the district average or to the state average. You can compare school to school. So if you have two Title I schools in the same district, you can, because they have similar clientele, you can compare one with another. Then within the school, you can compare one department to another. Let's say 9th grade art science to 7th grade integrated science. You are able to compare how they do. Then you can compare teacher to teacher. So if you have two teachers of earth science, you can see how their students do on the end-of-level test. And finally, you can access the information at the student's level to find out how this student has done. As I mentioned before, Cognos is a relational database. The software itself is the database, and then you or somebody in the district sets up the screens and the kinds of reports and imports the data. In Alpine, we have a director of testing and evaluation, John Jeffrey, and he and his assistant take care of this for us. If you're the administrator and need a particular kind of information that you know the data is available, but you don't yet have the report that you want, you can call him and he creates the report template for you to use. And that's a really important service. Okay, and the relational database, there are 3 parts to it right now. That we can look at elementary or secondary, and the same software gives us the ability to do online surveys. So when accreditation comes around and you have to survey the parents and the students and the teachers, you can create online surveys and survey them that way. Obviously, it depends on the parents having access to the internet, but if you have SET meetings or an open house, that you can use the library computers, for example, to have parents go in and take the survey. This is an example of the expanded menu, so that you can see for the elementary schools, if you were a principal, you would be able to get information about the criterion reference tests that the state gives at the end of level for science, math, and reading or language arts. You can look at, instead of calling them reports, they're called cubes. I'm not quite sure why. But you can look at the school by itself. You can look at the current school and compare it to other schools, or just your school by itself. You can get information on the direct reading assessment, the DRA, which our district gives 3 times a year to most elementary students. So you can find out how they have improved from the fall to the spring, or from spring to the following spring. And you can see the gains that the students have made. This is especially important if you have implemented some sort of intervention program. If you're using a program like Read 180 in 7th grade, then you would want to know whether it's effective or not. And this will give you a way of evaluating the programs at your own school. The state has recently changed to the Iowa Basic Skills Test. Since this was the first year, there's no historic data. You can't do trends. But as time goes on, that you'll be able to compare this year with last year or the year before to see if the students are getting better, if the teacher is getting better. But right now we're back to step 1 for that. For the secondary schools, they have more possibilities, not just the CRT, the DRA, and the DWA, and basic skills. They also have the BISCIT test. That's the basic skills core test, competency test. So you can access that material. The 10th graders take the test, but the people who need to see the test scores are the junior highs that feed into the high school for 10th grade. Because it's at the junior highs where the basic skills are supposed to really be taught. They're not high school level skills at all. If you're a high school, you can find out the AP test and the ACT test as well. As I mentioned with the basic skills competency test, that the data is organized by junior highs. So even though this junior high has fed into several high schools, the relational database knows where the student came from, and so gives back to the junior high the data that is relevant to the junior high, even though the students may be spread out. So then you can analyze how the students that you taught have done in reading and math and the different parts of reading and math. So then you can look at your program and try to strengthen it wherever you may find weaknesses. It may be a change in the textbook that you're using, in the methods the teachers are using, in placement ideas. How have you placed the kids in classes? Do you need 5 levels of math at every grade level? You know, questions like that you now have the data to help you. In the Utah Core Assessment Tests, these are the CRTs that are given at the end of the year, that you can do trends, how your school has done over the years, whether you're going up or down. You can look at school-to-school comparisons. You can look by department, like just 4th grade, and you can look at the school itself. The one I've displayed here is the percent of students at each mastery level. For the state test, they use 4 mastery levels, 4, 3, 2, 1, with 4 being the highest, 4 and 3 pass, 2 and 1 don't. Each of these colors represents a different teacher at this particular school. So to me, my eyes are drawn to this one, and actually as I look at it closer, these two aren't the same. This one, a teacher has the highest number of people who are at the 4th level, the substantial mastery. has fewer down here, fewer here, and even fewer over here. I'm the principal, so I know what kind of classes this teacher has. What would be your guess? Probably an advanced level class, perhaps a gifted class. But either she is an outstanding teacher or her students were selected in some way that they just naturally do better. Go ahead. On the x-axis, it's minimal, partial, sufficient, and substantial. Basically 1, 2, 3, and 4. On the other hand, this teacher has most of her students in the minimal category. Again, if I'm the principal, I look at that and I draw conclusions from who that teacher is. Most likely, this teacher might be a resource teacher, and that this resource students may have a harder time doing the basic skills than a class that's in a mixture. It also tells me where we need to put more emphasis, which in this case might be the resource students. This is one of my favorites. What this shows is the percent, and the upper line is 80%. How many students pass each of the objectives on the Earth Science test? The blue represents one teacher, the yellow represents another teacher within the same school. So as I look at this, I can see that the blue teacher did better than the yellow teacher on every single objective. But as a principal, that doesn't tell me necessarily that the blue teacher is better. It could be that the yellow teacher only has one section, and because advanced math is offered that period, that she doesn't have any of the really bright students. But as a principal, I know that kind of mediating information. On the other hand, if there were a huge discrepancy and there was no reason to think that the students were different, then I might ask the blue teacher to mentor the yellow teacher. You can do the same thing between schools. If my school struggles with a part of the math test, let's say it's the geometry section, and my neighboring junior high has done real well, I might arrange a meeting between the two and have them try to let my teachers know what they have done that they think is so successful to improve the geometry scores. Then another option is to disaggregate the information by subgroups. This is required for No Child Left Behind, but even if it weren't, you would want to do this. So you can find out if the females did better than the males, if the different ethnicities within your school are all performing at roughly the same rate. There are 5 different levels of limited English proficiency students, the ELL students. So you might want to see how well they're doing. Of course, income is an important one that I think most studies show that lower socioeconomic kids don't achieve as well. But that may be something that you can work with. It's not really an excuse, it's just a good predictor. No. You use a different method. It's called free and reduced lunch. So if the parent qualifies for free or reduced lunch, that's what low income means. So that you're not asking the parent directly, rather indirect. But that's what No Child Left Behind uses as well. It's really the only indication that school districts have of the economic level of the student. I think you're familiar with the Title I schools. They use free and reduced lunch to qualify for Title I. You have to have a high percentage of students who are either on free or reduced lunch. Special ed is another area that frequently the students don't do as well as the average students. To me, this is somewhat of a catch-22. The definition of special ed is a child who's performing below his potential by 2 years, roughly speaking. So you separate them out as a group, and then as soon as the child reaches the level where he's performing well, he's removed from special ed. So it seems like it's, to me, a hopeless situation that this particular group is never going to be able to perform at the average level because by definition they're performing below average. On the DRA and the DWA, the direct reading and direct writing assessments, you can also get information. Since this is our 3rd year, you can see trends over 3 years' time. We can look at the scores of the current students and we can disaggregate the information so that, again, we can look at the subgroups. We're doing Iowa Basic Skills Tests now. Since it's the first year of the data, you're not going to get any trends, but you can still drill down to the teacher level to compare one teacher's average with another teacher. So if you had one teacher that was struggling with math, you might pair that teacher up with another teacher who has done outstanding work right within your school. To me, with all of this data available, that an administrator can easily access the information about student achievement. Then, using this data, they work with the teachers or the department chairs or the curriculum specialists within their school to improve instruction so that the students benefit. Okay, do you have any questions on this Cognos part? It can be used for whatever purpose. Yes, it can be used for.
And then as far as study capabilities, would those and other groups who are doing studies
you would need to get special permission from the school district. Notice that I'm not going to rely on Michelle here, that everything's on PowerPoint. That's because I cannot access the service outside the school district. That's how confidential they keep the material. So, that's right. And I also imagine that they can structure what your rights would be. Perhaps they could give you rights down to the school level, but not to the teacher or individual student. So as long as they're nebulous numbers, there's no privacy involved.
And not
the special ed students can include the resource students. That means that they're giving special education services for fewer than 3 hours a day. Then you have the full-time resource students, which would be 3 hours or more a day. Then you have all sorts of other special groups, autistic, behavior disorders, and they all qualify as special ed. I'm not sure to what, for No Child Left Behind, I'm not sure of the definition, but that's the definition that I've seen myself. No, there's a California test, there's Iowa,
Stanford 9.
and Stanford 9. Those are the 3 major ones. I assume that the Iowa Basic Skills Test was either developed originally for Iowa or by Iowa, but I don't think the name has much of a meaning right now. So, that's right. And I think it's more than which ones are accredited. Perhaps it's the ones that align best with our curriculum. That would be my hope.
Those are the numbers that express
These are the
criterion that this basic skills provide you for further.
And the same with the criterion reference tests that they take at the end of the year. Those are Utah developed tests. So this has a combination of the norm reference test and criterion reference. The norm reference are always the national ones in this group. AP and the ACT test would also be norm reference. Yes.
Am I correct in assuming that Cognos is used statewide in all 4 districts?
That I assume, but I do not know. Because it has all of the state testing information, my assumption is that the state owns Cognos or leases it or whatever. But I'm not sure on that. It's not my real area of expertise.
It sounds like Alpine has made some adaptations.
Because
Much more cutting edge. Alpine 3 on top of the Alpine 3.
right, Cognos itself is just the database. Then you have to create the report, and that part is done locally. But most databases that you would use, you either to create your own report or use built-in ones. So, any other questions on that? Sure. Would you say that again, please? No, at most this is the third year. But certainly it gives the principals and the educational leaders the data they need to at least know that they need to make a change. And if I were a school-level person, I would be able to answer your question better, that I would have seen that it made a difference in my school or that it didn't. One of the things that John Jeffrey has just completed is he has gone to every school in Alpine District, showed the principals the data, helped them to understand all of the charts and the graphs, and to target certain areas that need to be improved, and even showed them where they can pair up with other schools to get a mentor to help. So I think that if data-driven decision-making is important at all, then Cognos should be very helpful in improving achievement.
Can I just do a little testimonial?
Sure.
I'm in reading instruction and used to work for the state. But this kind of data, just imagine a principal being able to find out how well their students did in maybe main ID and comprehension. And they did pretty well in vocabulary, but they went down here. Now he can find out other schools that are in the same socioeconomic level that appear to be better in that area, and he can send teachers to go observe what is it they're doing that's making a difference here. This is really one of the first times we've been able to zero in on areas of reading and language arts and actually find out who's doing better and how are they getting there. And I think it's powerful, I really do.
Yes?
How many other ways are factoring out?
But you can factor that in. You can compare one Title I school to another. Plus, if you're comparing it to your own school, you know whether the number of free and reduced lunch students has increased suddenly or not. Frequently you're comparing, and the same with ethnicity, that you can watch the numbers change, and if the ethnicity changes suddenly or increases in diversity a lot, then you may need to pay more attention to cultural issues. It doesn't give solutions. Like I mentioned at first, a needs assessment tells you that something needs to be changed because your desired level of functioning and the actual are different. And that tells you that something needs to change, and hopefully instruction is the way to change it. That's not always true. If you suddenly get more disadvantaged children, then instruction may not be enough. But they have lists not here, but they have lists of schools that have low socioeconomic and high functioning kids at the same time. So it's not 100% effective as a predictor, but it's a good place to be. Yes?
I'm anxious to see Power School, but I do have a question.
Okay.
The slide where you have the purple and yellow colors.
Yes.
Those were unobjective.
They were.
So can a principal actually be objective now?
The principal and the teachers.
And also, I don't have one just
I've only seen it to objective level. The items change year by year. So I don't think they can get down that far. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is Power School. There are three aspects. Power School is owned by Apple Computer Company. Our district has used it for 6 years now. We like it, but I'm not here to sell this product. The idea is that this is a student information system. The state has one that smaller districts use, and it's free. It just won't handle a district the size of Alpine. Okay, what Power School does is it's a relational database. So there's a part of it that sits on the teacher's desktop machine, and it's called Power Grade. It's a grade book. The teacher takes attendance, creates assignments, enters scores for the assignment, sets up how the final grade will be calculated. This information, whenever the teacher is plugged into the network, is sent immediately to the server. Then the administrator, well, let's skip the administrator. Then the parents can log in every night or every afternoon or whenever. They can see their own students, their own son or daughter, the information by assignment for every single class. If it's a secondary school student, they can see which period they cut today. It gives parents the information to make decisions. One of my friends says that in his neighborhood, all the parents log in to Power School on Friday afternoon. And if they don't like what they see, their kids don't get a weekend. But if you remember, at least when I was in school, I never knew how I was doing in a class until the teacher wrote the grade on the report card. When I was the librarian at Canyon View, we had about 20 kids who came in every single morning to check their own grade. So they knew when they were getting behind, or they knew when the teacher hadn't credited them with late work that they turned in. It was really powerful, I think, for the students to be able to see how they're doing and what they need to do to improve. The third part of Power School, then, is the administrative part, and that's what I want to show you. I know that from where you're sitting, this is probably a blur, but I'll try to describe the stuff more than anything else. To me, Power School gives you access to student data. Then it gives you access to teacher data. And as an administrator, you're probably more interested in the teacher data. You enter information about courses and sections so that the kids and the teachers get schedules. It shows the attendance data, it shows you the assignments, and the term grades for each term. So you have all of that information at your fingertips. I'd like to go a little more deeply into this. I'm going to choose a student, and I know you can't read any of this. This is my practice server, so none of the students are real, so we don't have to worry about confidentiality. So I've pulled up the name of the student. This is Brisa Campbell. That's not her real name. What I see here is called the quick lookup screen. It shows me each and every one of the classes that she's currently enrolled in. Then this particular school uses trimesters. so that I have 3 trimester columns. We're only finishing the second one now. For reading, I can click on the 100% that she has. Well, let me click on the 95 in composition. Here I can see every single assignment for this term. I can see what the student's grade was, and I can see what the total possible points. I can see the percent and the grade. Then I can even see the things that she hasn't turned in yet. Noticing the date on these 2 items, it was 3/1. That was yesterday. So the teacher may not have had time to put them in yet. And there is no 0. If it were a 0, then I'd know that Risa Joe didn't turn it in. But when it's just a blank, that I'm waiting on the teacher. So that's the first kind of thing. Administrators get calls from parents complaining about what the teacher is doing grade-wise. The principal can look it up and see exactly what the teacher has been doing. One of my favorites is down here, grades last updated on 2/10/2005. I wouldn't be real happy with this teacher if it's been over 2 weeks since she's updated the grades. Parents and students can only make good decisions if they have good data, and if you're 2 weeks behind, they don't have the information they need. Okay, then I can look at custom screens. These are things that I have created because it's built into the PowerSchool. It allows us to create our own pages and our own fields. So, for example, I have the math core tests, and this student is a first grader, so she doesn't have any. But if she were a 6th grader, she would have her 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade test scores. So as an administrator or as a teacher, I can see exactly what this student, the test history for this particular student. I can also customize it for my school. This school wants to know the family representative. In elementary schools, the family rep is the one who gets the note to take home. Instead of publishing 6 of them, one for each student in the family, they just print one and send it to the family rep. That saves money. Okay, other things that I can look up. I can look up demographics. So this tells me the information on addresses, contact numbers, ethnicity, date of birth, age, that kind of information. I can also look up parents and guardians and get information there. I can look at attendance. The X here means that the student was absent on that date for that class. So I can find out if the student has been absent a lot. I can find out if these 3 students have been absent exactly the same days. Things like that. I can look at the students' historical grades, not only for this year but for previous years. I can look at log entries. This is where I, as the principal, would keep track of behavior problems. That would be under discipline. But I can also have educational interventions, where if this student participates in an after-school reading program, then I could document that. If they've participated in reading recovery, I could document that. The nice thing about this log entry is I know one principal who keeps index cards in the shirt pocket, but to keep track of all of the behavior problems. But when he leaves the school, there's no record that those students have had a behavior problem. Where here, if there are 2 administrators or more in the school, I can make an entry, and then when you see the same student, you can see that I've already seen them for the same or different problems. So it really helps to both document and communicate among the administrators.
Sometimes we'll carry around a Palm Pilot and we'll use that to keep track of data on students and behavior problems and so forth. Is that way that we download that data from the Palm Pilot into this system?
No. The question was, if you have a Palm Pilot, can you download information from Palm to here? That answer is no. The other way around is yes. that you can take all of the demographic and the class and the grades and the attendance, provided you have the right program on your palm, you can download that information to here. But right now we're not exporting any information from the palm to go back the other way. But it's certainly, especially in secondary schools, they found the palm pilot's really handy when you need a kid out in the hall, that you know that they should be in class. As I mentioned before, parents and students can access this. I can pull up a report that tells me exactly when the parent has accessed the system. So the parent can't say, I didn't know, because you can see that they logged in and give them the time. I can print reports for this student. For example, I could print their report card. If they lose it, I can print a single copy. I can look at their schedule to find out where they should be, and I can modify their schedule. So those are all the things that I can do for just a single student. Then I can pull up groups of students. For example, we were talking about ethnicity and gender. I click on Enrollment Summary, and here is a big chart. You can see that there's a number and then a blue and a pink one. So here are the kindergarten American Indians. There are 3. 1 is a male and 2 are female. So I can, let's say that it's that time of year when we separate the girls from the boys for health instruction, and we need to send the appropriate letter home. So here's all the 5th graders. There are 42 girls. I can select them, then print a form letter that already has the parent's address on it and names, and that has all the information that I want them to know about the video that the girls are going to see, and just send it. What we do is you have a piece of paper right about here is the address. You fold it in thirds and put it into an envelope, and the address appears in that envelope, so that you don't even have to match mailing labels. That's a huge time saver. It's more accurate too. Okay. You can do searches by special programs. You could search for the resource students and see how their attendance compares to other students, or how the grades that they're doing. I can search by GPA. So if I wanted to do failure notices, I could find everyone whose GPA current is below 2.0. And it would generate that. Or I can do a search for anyone who has a D or an F. And again, that would be failure notices. Or for the kids who made the honor roll. I'm going to skip now over to reports to show you several reports that are really helpful. I can do an absentee report that will list all the kids that are absent today. More importantly, I can click on Power Grade Attendance, except that this is a dummy service. It goes out and it tells me which of my teachers have not taken attendance today. In this example that I have here, it's going to be all of the teachers because none of them really took attendance. But I would be able to see which teachers aren't taking attendance. One of the schools, anyone whose name isn't on this gets a candy bar as a thank you for keeping up with attendance. I don't know how effective that was in changing things, but then we can also go back as a principal. I can look at the teacher's grade book. I can pull up the spreadsheet and see just what she sees. I can set the range, so I want to look only at the entries for the last week. If it's blank, I know the teacher hasn't been making regular entries. A week shouldn't go by without an entry. Maybe to be generous, I'd make it a 2-week window. So I can do it for the whole school, and once I identify those 5 teachers who don't keep up, then I can monitor just those 5 teachers. I can do grade count, so that I can see that as a whole, my school has this many A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. Then I can do it by teacher. So I can see that while this is the curve for the school as a whole, this teacher's curve is very skewed one way or the other. So I have all of that data that can help me to address needs in the school. And I'm going to stop there. I've really only scratched the surface of what a student information system like PowerSchool can do. But to me, it is an outstanding tool for the principal to use. And I wish more of them were using it in depth. Yes?
You said there's a free type 1 from the state. How much does PowerSchool cost?
I paid over $30,000 for it.
For how long period of time?
For 1 year. That's just a maintenance fee. They charge you a real fee to buy it, and then the maintenance is what you pay after that. And it goes up every year. But that.
Does that cover the whole district, or
That's cover the whole. It's by student.
by student?
So our costs go up for 2 reasons. One is that the district is growing. So each year we have to pay a higher fee because we have more students. But the other thing is, since we signed on early, that our rates were somewhat lower than the others, and they decided that we need to catch up and pay our fair share. So that's not good news. The state system is free. It does many of the same things that PowerSchool does. It does some things better. The one thing that it is not is that it is not customizable. So you have to, they have reports that you can make choices, but you can't create your own. So that's one of the others. Any other questions on the student information system? Yes.
For Cognos, it's not personalizable. We try not to understand the difference between Cognos and
The difference between Cognos and PowerSchool is they have different functions. This is a grade book, so the teachers are inputting information that way. That's the source of most information here. In PowerSchool, compared to the state system, I can create my own fields and make them become part of the database. The state system, I don't have that ability. I can only use the fields that they have. With Cognos, I'm sure as they get that it's probably more customizable because the texts change every year, so they have to be able to do something.
And will either one of these programs document social skills when either the teachers weigh in comments or they grade on different social skills that need to develop?
Her question was on social skills. Do either of the programs monitor that? Cognos does not. In PowerSchool, there's a place called log entry, the discipline entry. So the teacher in PowerGrade makes it's called submit a log entry where she has she can document what she's done to try to help the student. It's sort of when she needs help from the administration. It not only becomes part of the PowerSchool database, but it also sends an email to the principal, heads up, here's a problem. In that sense, that kind of thing can be done. In addition, you can use standards, where we have standards for social skills, social development, and for work habits that some of the schools use as well. So yes, it can. It doesn't always. You have to choose.
And do they use it for conceptual?
You can do it certainly, like there's a place for activities that you could use made honor roll, first term, 9th grade, so that you would be able to keep track of how often the kids made honor roll. I can't think of any school who's using the log entry as a success story, but you can use it to document participation in like Read 180 or Reading Recovery or an after-school program. So it could be used for that. I'm just afraid that we're not using it. Any others? Yes.
So obviously, you guys feel like the high price tag is worth it. Did you have to do an analysis to justify it, or maybe you might talk to your kids? Why is it? Because I mean, it's
Why is it?
Did you end up saving $1,000 by using that? Or?
We save no money by using it.
Okay.
1999 was the year before Y2K. And the two grade book programs that were in use within the district were not Y2K compliant. So we had to buy one. I was not part of the selection committee, but they looked at many different products. This one happened to be out of Layton, Utah, and has since been purchased by Apple. So that we were one of the first districts to use it and had a good experience with it. What we can do now that we could not do before is the district superintendent can access all of this information for each of the students. Where before it was simply on the teacher's grade book for the most part, especially in elementary school.
So the greater flow of information.
Right, it's more accessible and it's uniform.
So a job, it's not a...
No, it's more like a job in school. Yeah, so, yeah. And what I do is help people solve problems. Or, for example, last year we decided that we had 614 different course names in elementary school, and we consolidated those to about 40. So now our elementary schools have uniform course names. They also have uniform grading scales, one for 3, 4, 5, 6, and one K-1-2. We've just implemented, we're piloting in 10 schools a standards-based report card, and we're able to do that with Power School. So those are things that we're using the power of Power School.
Maybe that's safety, and you should have had it for like all of that.
It should have been like this all along. But, 10 years ago, technologically, it wasn't possible. Not every teacher had a computer on the desktop anymore. So technology has caught up with the needs of education. Any other questions? Well, I thank you for being such a good audience.
Thank you.